here in the United States, what we're looking at, about a month ago, the Obama administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Food and Drug Administration, put out an announcement that they are largely to entirely dismantling any emergency radiation monitoring that they had put in place, and it wasn't much, post-Fukushima. Now we're back to the normal, once every 3 months we'll look at the milk supply to see how bad the radioactivity is. Once a month we'll look at the rainwater. It's incredible. It's like the Obama administration, the federal government here, does not want to know what's in the air, what's in the water, what's in the food. So we need to take leadership from the Japanese people and get very active here in the United States, just in our own self-interest. We need to protect our food supply. This catastrophe is still underway. It is not under control. They still have 3 melted-down cores that they're desperately trying to cool. They have multiple pools of high-level radioactive waste that they're desperately trying to keep full of water. So how we can dismantle our radiation monitoring systems, given the global scope of this catastrophe, is just beyond me, and we need to change that.
And Kevin, what is the status of Fukushima Daiichi? That is a 3-plant cluster that is south of Fukushima Daiichi. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's just 7 miles to the south. And when I was there last August, I stood midway between them on a bluff that looked out over the Pacific Ocean. And you look to the north 3.5 miles, and it's Fukushima Daiichi with its 6 units. You look 3.5 miles to the south, and it's Daiichi with 4 units, actually.
4, okay.
Both owned and operated by Tokyo Electric Power Company. I just learned this about a week ago at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards Subcommittee meeting on Fukushima. A Department of Energy official, just in passing, mentioned that by the skin of its teeth, Fukushima Daiichi, the other plant with 4 reactors, was able to continue cooling its cores and its pools because a single power line from the external grid survived the earthquake and tsunami. He said the tsunami was actually bigger at Daiichi than it was at Daiichi, but fortunately, and I don't think this was entirely intentional by Tokyo Electric, Daiichi was built at a higher elevation. So bigger tsunami, but the plant was at a higher elevation. Its diesels were taken out, just like at Daiichi. The emergency diesel generators were destroyed by the tsunami. Fortunately for the world, those 4 reactors continued their cooling because of a single off-site power line.
Kevin, one of the people I'm in touch with is anti-nuke activist Harvey Wasserman. He's the author of a book called Solartopia. And he sent out an email blast over a week ago calling on the world community to gather and really shame the Japanese into basically doing what was done at Chernobyl, to pour concrete into these reactors and form a sarcophagus to seal them up. Do you know if that is in the offing, and if TEPCO and the Japanese government need a nudge to move to that step?
Well, I think Harvey's essay there was really brilliant because it called on the global community to join together and deal with this catastrophe for what it is, which is a global catastrophe. This is not a catastrophe for Tokyo Electric, and they have shown themselves to be not entirely forthcoming with the truth. And it really is going to take the resources of more than even the Japanese government, which is one of the biggest economies on the planet. This is too big for them to deal with. So, yes, there has been some cooperation. I mean, the U.S. military, which is stationed in Japan, all these decades after World War II, were still there.
Yeah.
They were involved and still are from the very first minutes of this catastrophe at Fukushima Daiichi. But it's going to take a whole lot more than that. And, yes, incredibly, 25 years and more after the Chernobyl catastrophe, they have yet to replace that original sarcophagus, which is at risk of collapse and causing a second Chernobyl catastrophe, the radioactive dust cloud that would come out from that collapse. Well, they are about $800-900 million short and of paying for a new sarcophagus to be built over it. And yes, we're going to have to do something like that at Fukushima Daiichi, but the thing is, the fire's not out yet, so to speak. The molten cores have to be continuously cooled for a very long time. We're talking a year or two again, last week, the Department of Energy official at this NRC meeting said that the Unit 1 core is going to have to be cooled, actively cooled, for a year before it reaches cold shutdown. Units 2 and 3 will have to be cooled for the better part of 2 years. So the complication is you can't just build a big concrete enclosure with these molten cores still needing cooling. You're going to have to provide that cooling actively for that long a time.
Wow.
And Chernobyl was on fire for 10 days.
Mm-hmm. And that just leads to other complications, including continuing high levels of radioactivity at the site, the potential for airborne and waterborne emissions, and the risk to the surrounding population. So, Kevin, let's talk about something that's a little bit more positive and brighter, and that is that the nation of Germany has made a very powerful decision to basically phase out nuclear power over the next 10 years. Tell us about that.
It's an incredible and wonderful piece of news. And yes, I mean, at what cost? It's really born out of the Fukushima nuclear catastrophe. But not only that, the German anti-nuclear movement has been very active. That's an understatement. For many decades, actually. And it's a testament to their amazing work over the decades. So what happened in Germany was that back in the year 2000, the Social Democrats, which is like our Democratic Party, and the Green Party, which is very vibrant in Germany, achieved what was called the nuclear phase-out consensus. This was in 2000, 11 years ago, that by 2020, give or take, they were going to phase out nuclear power in Germany. Well, Angela Merkel and her conservative coalition a couple years ago won the prime ministership, and they have worked ever since for the past year to undo that phase-out plan. And they were well on their way to extending the operations of German reactors for another 12 or 14 years. They weren't going to phase out nuclear power until 2036. Well, Fukushima happened, and then in late March, there was a state election near Stuttgart. It's called Baden-Württemberg state in Germany. And the conservatives had controlled that state legislature for 60 years. They lost the election to the Greens.
Wow.
There have been other regional elections where the Greens have won the regional elections. And so Angela Merkel sees the writing on the walls. The German people want to phase out nuclear power. And if she did not do this backflip, this 360-degree turn, her political career would be over instantly. And it still may well be over. We'll see with the upcoming federal elections in Germany. But she is now fully committed to a nuclear phase-out by 2022. They instantly, when Fukushima began, closed down their 7 oldest reactors in Germany. Those will never restart. That is a permanent shutdown now. The other 10 remaining reactors in Germany, they, like you said, will phase them out in the next 10 years. So that's about 1 nuclear reactor shutting down each year in Germany for the next decade. And their plan, Germany is already a world leader in energy efficiency, solar, photovoltaic power, and wind power. Their plan is to dramatically expand efficiency and renewables even more in the next 10 years.
And Kevin, of course, on the heels of the example set by Germany, the United States has done what?
President Barack Obama has stood by his guns and called for a $36 billion expansion in the nuclear loan guarantee program to build new reactors in this country at taxpayer financial risk. And the money grab is happening yet again on Capitol Hill. The nuclear power industry is looking for not just that $36 billion expansion. They would love a $100 billion expansion. We've been fighting against this for the past 10 years, first under Bush and Cheney and now under Obama. It just shows how powerful a player the nuclear power industry is in this country. They spend, from 1999 to 2009, we know that they spent $645 million on federal lobbying and an additional $64 million on federal campaign contributions. So the nuclear power industry sees the White House and Congress as the best democracy money can buy, and we're really up against it. Folks need to contact their 2 U.S. senators and their U.S. representatives and President Obama and tell them, no way, no more bailouts for an industry that's enjoyed public subsidies in the hundreds of billions of dollars for over 50 years now in the country.
And Kevin, did I hear correctly that there was a plan to build 2 new reactors in Texas, and that has been canceled?
It was the next candidate for a nuclear loan guarantee. They were poised to get one from the Obama administration, but it turned out that their major partners are Tokyo Electric Power Company, Toshiba Nuclear of Japan, Hitachi Nuclear of Japan, and even the Japanese government, the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, were major partners in that proposal at South Texas Project. The U.S. partner, called NRG, Energy of Princeton, New Jersey, as soon as Fukushima was just a few weeks underway, they said that they were not going to spend another penny on the proposal. They would still like to get a license from the Nuclear Rubber Stamp Commission, as I call it, which gives away licenses. They go through the motions, but they will grant that license in the end. And then NRG, I suppose, hopes to sell it to somebody else who's crazy enough to actually try to build the thing.
Okay, so it's not dead yet. It's just on hold. Is that the better way to characterize it?
Well, it probably is dead, but, they will do their utmost to see this thing through. There are other projects that are in a similar situation, like France wanted to build a reactor in Maryland. The U.S. partner pulled out, and Electricity de France, which is government-owned, also Arriva of France, which is government-owned. They're hoping to keep that thing alive. They still want to build their reactor in Maryland, but whether or not there's a U.S. company crazy enough to do what the local utility thought was too crazy to actually do, we'll have to see.
Well, Kevin, I really appreciate this update and the great detail that you can offer our listeners. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
Oh, wow. Well, I would just encourage people to reach out to your local anti-nuclear groups. They're all over the country. Every atomic reactor in this country has a watchdog group. And if you need help finding them, just contact us. Our website is beyondnuclear.org. We try to put Fukushima updates on the homepage every day.
All right. Kevin, I really appreciate your work. Thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
You bet. That's Kevin Kamps, the radioactive waste watchdog at beyondnuclear.org.